So the MSP is Microbyte MSP, has been going for well over 15 years. Supports around 120 clients, small to medium, and later that evolved to taking on 24/7 clients, which is where we opened an office in Dubai as well, and then started running night shifts from the UK. That then was underutilized, so we started the brand White Label IT, which is its own, will be its own entity very soon. Along the way, in the last couple of years, again, full transparency, we purchased another outsourcing company called Microtex, and that was folded into our white label brand. So White Label IT is the outsourcing model company, and Microbyte MSP is the MSP. It's very important to know that a lot of the standards propagate through both sides, and that is why we're able to offer, I believe, quite a unique high-level service compared to some other outsourcing operations. So when an MSP comes to us and says we're looking outsourcing, what we don't do is say, yeah, jump on board, here's a phone number, divert all your calls to here. Where you have to start, in our opinion, is from the ground up. We have a saying that you can't outsource your problems, okay? If some basic systems don't exist within the MSP, then you should think twice before jumping straight in with an outsourced provider that will take all that on. That's why our process, we have a very rigid onboarding set of criteria when an MSP comes to us. And that really involves drilling down into, okay, what specifically are you looking for? Is it just out of hours? Is it overflow? Is it both? Have you recently lost a team that you're looking to replenish and seeing if you can do that with an outsourced entity? There's all of those things that need to be answered first. And because we're an MSP in our own right, or we have an MSP in our own right, we know exactly the areas that it can go wrong in, and we use that knowledge to ask those poignant questions at the beginning. And let's take an example. So let's say the MSP wants to forward all of their nighttime calls to us, okay, which isn't an unusual scenario. But what they don't necessarily consider is, okay, let's say there's an escalation in the middle of the night. Do you want everything escalating back? Do you want some of it? Who do you want to be woken up? And who are we going to call? Are we going to call your main number back that then comes back to us again? There's all of these little nuances that are quite easy to iron out when you know what questions to ask. But when you don't, that's where you come unstuck. And actually, that's where a lot of outsourcing, in our opinion, falls apart. It's from the basics. It is very rarely the technical ability to resolve those tickets. So going back to the beginning, an MSP will contact us. We'll take them through our onboarding process, which is quite heavily templated, but also documented. And we have a policy that we want to hold as little information on your clients in our systems as possible. Okay, so we work with the PSA, with the RMM, with your KBs. Our custom-built software, when it pops up on the agent's screen, says, right, okay, this is MSP X. Here are the platforms you need to log into, and we have some elements that help us do that a lot more smoothly because of the platform we've built. But ultimately, everything is kept within the client's PSA. So that's the first thing as far as keeping data safe, because it is an amazing amount of trust that people place in us. In addition to that, it is vital that we learn all of the nuances within the client systems, okay? Because not everybody is using Autotask, not everybody is using ConnectWise, which the vast majority of agents know how to use. They will be using custom software. So again, the moment there's a custom software discussion to be had, we jump straight into that plan of action. Okay, you need to show us how that works. We need to record snippets. We need to train agents. We need to create flowcharts. There's a hell of a lot of work that goes in to that process. We soon realized the same thing, that you want everybody to be able to take calls for those clients, but there will be one or two, you'll call them account managers, but they're more than that. They understand the nuances and the technical elements of a particular client. It is no different on the white label side. So no, we do want every single agent to be completely capable and competent of taking a call. Why wouldn't you want that? However, there are always those situations that will escalate and need a bit of tribal knowledge. And that's where we have what we would call a net admin assigned to those white label, to let's say your MSP. And that agent will know a little bit more of those nuances. And it is also their responsibility to re-standardize when something comes up that is out of the normal. So call comes in, let's say from yourself, saying, one of your clients, MailChimp's down, don't know how to add this contact list to send that. The first thing is that a normal support case or is that nuanced? We would say that's nuanced. Is it likely to come in again? If so, that would go back to the key agent, the key net admin, to work with you, the MSP, and say, okay, well, this is how you use lists in ActiveCampaign or MailChimp or whatever else. Let's put together that task template to make sure that that happens next time. Now, I'm really summarizing quite quickly, but it is imperative that every agent has a big start here button where they know where to go with a particular client and an MSP's client at that. It is an absolute travesty when you see first line, second line engineers picking up calls for clients that they have not only no clue about, but they don't even know where to start. And that's where we actually, I believe, excel. We create lots of clues. Leave clues is one of our values. Leave clues and create start buttons. And that's how we broadly get around what you're referring to. 100%. It does really end up a two-way street, and it is an incidental benefit of outsourcing with us that we are constantly pushing back, if you like, and it isn't in a non-constructive way. It's in a look, if you're trying to get the same result every time that every MSP should be driving for, then these things that come in that you don't know what to do with, they have to be tackled, but not in a really annoyed kind of, I wish I didn't have to deal with this way. It needs to fit in line with your continuous improvement process, which we have on both white label and on the microbyte side. Every failure that doesn't have a script needs to be treated as genuinely, and I mean, it's very, very basic and cliche, but it needs to be treated as a learning opportunity, but not accidentally. It can't just go on a list and trust someone's going to fix that at some point in the future. It has to go on a list that you know is going to be tackled in the same way every single time, every week. Share something that we've done for many, many years on our on the MSP side. We have what we call a Tech 101 board. And when someone has a great idea or something that comes in that they wish they could solve sooner, or they think there might be an automation route for, it goes on the board, and that person then has to think about that for a couple of weeks, because we only have the meetings every 2 weeks. They have to think about that and then present it to the whole room or several rooms if they think it's a good idea and it can get some traction. At that point, it then falls into our continuous improvement system where we'll have several meetings and help that person implement it in the right way. However, and this is the flip side of that, you can get a hell of a lot of ideas on that board, okay? So the way you tackle that is by making sure that anyone wants to put an idea on the board, they better be prepared to stand up and share how they're going to execute that. Otherwise, there'll be more important ideas that come out. And it is exactly the same with the white label, with the outsourcing. The biggest problem with the outsourcing model that I kind of witnessed before moving into this space is nobody's pushing back. Nobody's pushing back. They're just taking the calls, taking the emails, and hoping that the next time will be better. That is a two-way street between the outsourcer and the MSP. The more friction and obstruction there is, the better progress both sides will make. And I get very passionate about that subject, but that's genuinely how I feel. We have had an incident in the past. However, our non-compete agreements state that we are the ones that step back, always. our long term and my vision is that white label becomes the the outsourced provider of choice. We can't do that if MSPs think that Microbyte is going to be going after the same business. It really isn't like that. The vast majority of our experience has been that MSPs want to keep their personality, of course they do, and the work they give us is not necessarily linked to personality, okay? And often not everything is suitable to be outsourced in that way. However, our pushback doesn't come around scruffiness, if you like, or the tech stack. So let's say someone's using AVG and our agents prefer to use, I don't know, BitTitan. It makes Bitdefender. It makes no odds. The question is there a system around how to handle those calls for that particular platform or that particular thing? Now, there are some bugbears that emerge, okay, where clients have custom MSPs that we would suggest are non-standard because they work for the business in question, but they might not have some fundamental elements that make things easier for our agents. Let's say they don't have a contact list or they don't have some form of asset management or whatever it might be. We will obviously make the recommendation that, look, as you're growing your MSP, we're not reciting gospel by any means, but if you're trying to grow that MSP, having answers for these particular things will make a big difference to you as you grow. If you can't do that, so let's say you're with a custom PSA and you don't want to move to Autotask or Halo or whatever else, we need to figure out how we're going to create a process around those things that are not easy to translate. So if we're saying you need asset management, there's a reason you need asset management. It's because our agents are delivering a bad service to your client because we don't know what device they're using. And most of the time that reasoning, that benefit shines through. So as it stands at the moment, no, we don't, because it's mutually beneficial to us to help the MSP improve for all the elements they want to give us. Look, it's about the long term. We want, genuinely, that might sound funny, but we want MSPs to love us. We want them to know that actually I'm far better off using white label IT services 24/7 than worrying about hiring or managing my own people. The added benefit is when something comes in or I take on a bit of business that isn't standardized, white label IT will flag it and say, look, you really need to look at this. And we will work with the MSP to deliver that. And we have, I'm sure there's some MSPs on this call that are using our services. We have regular review calls. We have review case lists. We have a suggestion review task templates that we follow. I wish there was a recipe to that, but there isn't. We have countless one-man bands, the same mid-size MSPs, 5 to 10 staff, and then we have a fair chunk of MSPs, sort of 15 to 100 members of staff. It really depends on what the MSP is trying to outsource. Let me give you an example of what doesn't work. So the MSP that doesn't work for us is the one-man band who has just started 6 months ago. They've got a handful of clients. They don't yet know what antivirus to use, so every one of their 10 customers has a different one. They're not sure which RMM to use, so they're using 4 different ones with a handful of clients scattered across them. They don't know which PSA to use, so they're using an Excel sheet. Now, I just painted what some would consider, well, that's never going to happen scenario, but it has, and we've seen it. And as long as the MSP is not expecting us to overnight work miracles, we will decide which bits of that operation are standardized to a degree where we can take calls. And it might, in the first instance, just be, right, we'll answer your calls for you, we'll take details. If we can jump on with Screen Connect, we will, but then we'll pass the ticket back to you. And as long as that defining the edges has happened, then we will work with you. We won't work with you if you just want to outsource your problems, and that is our mantra. That will never work, outsourcing your problems. You have to recognize there's an issue and work with somebody that's going to help, but it really is going to be a partnership back and forth. So there isn't an ideal demographic, if I'm honest, Mike. What I will say is, as the MSPs get bigger, they give us more of the same kinds of work, and that's what sort of sets it apart. Because as an MSP gets bigger, they want to standardize that lower level of work, or that more consistent types of work, to be delivered in the same way every single time. And I know it sounds really pedantic, but it does make a difference if a client has got some of their PCs on a domain, some on a work group, and some on Azure AD. Like, it makes a difference when you're expecting a first line engineer to get on a call and diagnose a problem, like anything wrong with the desktop. So the ideal for us, and hopefully where MSPs work towards of their own volition, is an MSP that has standards around all those basics: the PSA, the RMM, what is the maturity matrix that we roll out to our customers. We like to work according to what most MSPs do, 1248 level SLAs. So however, we like to aim for all tickets and calls having some sort of response within the hour as a mandatory. And I'm pleased to announce that we exceed that, including action within the hour, for the vast majority of tickets that come in. However, there are also some clients that don't require that, and they just are happy with a 4-hour SLA as well. But the key thing is, we like to try to exceed all SLAs that we promise, because if we under deliver with what the MSP is promising to their clients, or we're not able to deliver the same time frame, it just starts on a bad note, because we're not able to deliver at least the response that the MSP is used to giving their customers. So in short, Mike, we match it. But we ascertain all of that at the very beginning of taking on a customer. And if it's something we don't feel we can make, because we have been asked to take on 15-minute SLAs, and we say, look, we're sorry. If it's a P1, if there's a major outage, then yes, we will do our best to get to it within 15 minutes. But if you need that sort of response, we would hope the vast majority of MSPs would want to get involved within 15 minutes if it's that much of an issue. I'll give you a brilliant example. We actually have a list against clients where this is relevant, called P1 case examples. And it is, what action do you want us to take if these particular situations come in place? It doesn't need to be an accident. So if there is a server outage or a power outage, what would we do? Well, we'd do the basics that any MSP would do on a first line. We'd take the call, we would see if we can gain access to site, we'd ascertain if it's power, if it's internet, if there's been any major changes. We would do all of that as a matter of course, because that's what our agents are trained in. The definition comes after that point. Is, okay, we discover there's no access to site. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to call the internet provider? Do you want us to call the power company? We will, if you've given us what we call a TT for that, a task template. We find the best relationships and the best outsourcing experiences work when that clear definition, that defining the edges, as we call it, has been put in place, where the MSP says, no, at that point it's gone too far. If you can't gain access to a host, we want to know. And if the MSP doesn't have any default lines around that sort of thing, we will make a suggestion on at what point we're going to wake them up. No, we don't want that. There are outsourced agents that will do that sort of service, but you get what you pay for. And if you genuinely care about your clients and you want them to have an experience which is similar to the one you deliver as an MSP, then you won't go into business like that. Needless to say, you hit the nail on the head. We get a lot of inquiries from people that are selling a particular product, and they think, oh, I could just go into IT, buy a load of these tickets and palm everything off to white label. We get that a lot, but we turn away a lot as well. You need somebody in your business. If you're outsourcing, you need somebody that understands the outsourcing model. Otherwise, you're reselling a product. And you're then reselling IT support, but you're not actually doing anything for it. You're trusting that whoever you're reselling it to is taking the burden of that relationship with the white label provider. It doesn't work. The MSP still has to be the middleman for that relationship with that client to understand a base level of what's going on. You can't just buy tickets and sell them if you want a good experience. Everybody that comes to work with us really does want to grow with us as well and help us improve our service. And it just, in terms of how we keep on top of that, we have so much contact with all of our clients as a matter of process. We have regular review calls, we have escalation processes, we have well, more increasingly, there's more outreach campaigns. There's lots that we do around that to keep customers close. We want to know about a problem, not the third time we make a mistake, the first time. Never let anything go. That is our mantra, really.
Because we don't really operate 24/7.
So you'd be looking at an overflow type model, or would you be looking at choosing the tickets to assign to us?
Yeah, probably choosing actually.
Yeah. So the way that works on a practical level, and that's a very common way to do it. We would be assigned a queue within your PSA that would be called, sometimes anonymous, other support queue or whatever. Our agents would be monitoring that, but also we would make sure alerts are linked directly to that queue and only that queue. So when you post something in there, the alert comes to our PSA, pops up, assigned to an agent, then we jump into your PSA and assign it from there. So if you are looking for visibility and you choosing the tickets, you would be assigning that, dropping in our queue, and then we would get started with that. Once within the MSP's PSA, they determine at what point tickets are supposed to be our responsibility or phone calls are our responsibility. We assign a dedicated email to, let's say, yourself, that you will trigger when there are alerts at a particular time of day or particular types of tickets that you want to come to us. So in terms of the prioritization, yes, that's completely managed in our PSA as it's distributed around the team. But then at that point, in answer to your second question, no, our agent logs onto your PSA, works within your systems, and the only thing they record in ours is time spent or the general gist of the ticket. So the prioritization, and it's a fantastic point, the prioritization happens outside of that, outside of your PSA, but within ours. The same thing happens with phone calls. So we would provide you a DDI that you would fail over during a particular time or overflow or whatever else. That joins our queues, and then it's up to the SDMs here or the dispatch managers here to choose which agent gets onto which call next.